Green light from the CDC advisory panel. Bloomberg's Ed Baxter reports.
The panel is recommending the full CDC recommend use for those 6 months and older. It says it could allow the shots to be administered as early as this week. But of course, that will depend on individual healthcare providers getting supply and scheduling appointments. But healthcare industry leaders, along with Pfizer and Moderna, say they have been working logistics already. Financially, it will, of course, help both companies as vaccination administration has slowed. Ed Baxter, Bloomberg Radio.
North Korea's Kim Jong-un vowed full and unconditional support for Russia's Vladimir Putin. The two leaders, isolated by the West, held a summit that the U.S. warns could lead to a deal to supply ammunition for Moscow's war in Ukraine. Tech titans are advising the U.S. Senate on artificial intelligence today. Meta's Mark Zuckerberg, X's Elon Musk, and former Microsoft CEO Bill Gates are attending the closed-door AI Insight Forum on Capitol Hill. Global news 24 hours a day, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts. This is Bloomberg.
updates, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
It's 11:40 on Wall Street. We do check markets all day long here at Bloomberg. We have got stocks holding very close to session highs right now, with the S&P 500 index up 14 points to 4475, a gain right now of 0.3%. The Dow up 62 points, up by about 0.2%. The Nasdaq Composite Index up 65, up by 0.5%. 10-year at 4.27%, with a 2-year right now 5.00%. Spot gold down $3.50 the ounce to $19.10, a decline there of 0.2%. And West Texas Intermediate crude oil up now by 22 cents a barrel to 89.07, a gain of 0.3%. Stocks, bonds, and the dollar seeing small moves. A mixed inflation report reinforcing speculation that the Fed will pause its rate hikes but refrain from calling the end of its tightening cycle. Reaction to this morning's CPI data from Robert Tipp, the chief investment strategist at PGIM Fixed Income.
I think there's going to remain some anxiety as to whether this drop in inflation is transitory, right? They're not going to feel really good about this until they see 6 months, 9 months of a good trend towards low core inflation. But I think this is good progress.
And you can hear more of that conversation on the Surveillance podcast. You can download it wherever you get your podcasts. China is flagging security problems with iPhones, marking the government's first comments on reports that authorities are moving to restrict officials' use of Apple products. Today, Apple shares, they are lower by about 0.7%. Again, recapping, stocks are gaining. S&P up 12, now higher by 0.3%. I'm Charlie Pelleton. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie Pella, thank you so much. We appreciate that. Matt Miller, Paul Sweeney. We are here in the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio. We're also streaming live on that YouTube thing. I'm in the process of explaining the internet to Matt Miller. YouTube.com, and you can search Bloomberg Radio there. All right,
I actually posted a video on YouTube.
Did you?
Kind of my first YouTube post.
Look at you going all social.
About the Aston Martin
DBX
707. And I think, this week I'm going to post another one.
Are you really?
My handle is Last Call, but it's spelled with 4s instead of A's. So L4STC4LL.
Okay. We'll go with that.
In case you want to look it up.
In case you want to look it up. All right, let's talk IPOs, because we got the IPO market actually have a little interest out there. We got Bailey Lipschultz, who covers all the markets for us, and then Kunjan Sobhani, he leads semiconductor analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence. He's based out there in the beautiful San Francisco office on Pier 3 down there in the Embarcadero. Great stuff out there. He joins us via Zoom. Bailey, I want to start with you. Birkenstock. When I think Birkenstock, I think Matt Miller. And they're going public. Talk to us about this company and what this deal is.
Yeah, the company filed for their IPO yesterday evening, kind of an anticipated. Bloomberg had been all over that, expecting that they will target an initial valuation of about $8 billion. Looking at some of the results that they laid out, though, profitable, growing, the two things that investors are really looking for. They're L Catterton backed, so interesting deal laying out for this company when you look at kind of where we are talking to some of the analysts and investors. Latest in a string of consumer-facing companies that have filed. So consumer, if you're profitable, if you're growing and you have durability, some insight into where you're going forward, seems to be one of the areas alongside tech that there is interest both from the company and from investors.
All right, so that's nothing that Kunjan cares about.
No.
He's a lead semiconductor analyst. Yep. Maybe you're wearing Birkenstocks, Kunjan, but you're focused, I guess, primarily on ARM, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Talk to us about this IPO. ARM is tell us what ARM is, and tell us kind of what the pitch is from your perspective.
Yeah, so ARM is a semiconductor design IP company. They don't make chips; they make an IP which other chip makers can use for creating chips. Historically, they have the entire market when it comes to smartphone.
Welcome to Democracy Now!,
So
democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy
bought
Goodman.
them, the play
And
was
Libya
that
rescue
IoT
efforts
support.
continue in the eastern city of Derna following the catastrophic flooding brought about by Storm Daniel's torrential rains, which caused 2 dams to burst. An estimated 6,000 people have died, though that number is expected to go up. Bodies have been buried in mass graves. In front of Derna's hospital, people are searching for their loved ones amidst the dead bodies lined up on the ground. This is the hospital's manager, Mohammed Al-Kabisi.
The number of dead in this particular section is 1,700 deaths so far. We counted them as they were lying in the hallways. Whoever is identified is then buried. There are some who have not been identified. So we started photographing them and assigning numbers to them, then burying them as well. On the other side, they buried 500 people. Things are very bad. The hospital is dilapidated.
Derna's mayor said the city's dams have not been maintained since 2002. Much of Libya's infrastructure has crumbled during the years-long war and political instability, fueled by U.S. and foreign intervention that's gripped the nation. After headlines, we'll speak with a climate activist in Tripoli. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy has ordered 3 congressional committees to launch an impeachment inquiry into President Biden.
It appears that the president's family has been offered special treatment by Biden's own administration, treatment that not otherwise would have received if they were not related to the president. These are allegations of abuse of power, obstruction, and corruption, and they warrant further investigation by the House of Representatives.
The move came under pressure from far-right Republicans who threatened to remove him as Speaker. House investigations led by Republicans have not produced any evidence that Biden personally benefited from his son Hunter Biden's business deals. McCarthy did not schedule a full House vote on opening the inquiry, as some more moderate Republicans have opposed the action. This all comes as McCarthy's trying to gain his party's support for a deal to keep the government funded beyond a looming September 30th deadline. Florida's far-right lawmaker Matt Gaetz threatened Tuesday to bring a motion that could oust McCarthy over the spending bill, investigations into the Bidens and other issues.
Mr. Speaker, you are out of compliance with the agreement that allowed you to assume this role. The path forward for the House of Representatives is to either bring you into immediate total compliance or remove you pursuant to a motion to vacate the chair.
The White House said the impeachment inquiry was, quote, extreme politics at its worst, while House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries dismissed it as illegitimate and, quote, a kangaroo court fishing expedition and conspiracy theater rolled into one. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and Russian President Vladimir Putin met earlier today at the Vostochny Cosmodrome in far eastern Russia. Just hours before the leaders met, Pyongyang fired 2 short-range ballistic missiles off its east coast. Kim spoke as the brief summit opened.
Russia is now in the sacred fight against hegemonic forces in order to protect its sovereignty and security interests. We have constantly expressed our full and unconditional support for all the decisions taken by the president and the Russian leadership, and I want to assure you that we will always be together with Russia in the fight against imperialism.
The details of the Kim-Putin summit are not known, but North Korea and Russia are expected to be in talks over the trade of weapons and military technology. Meanwhile, during a speech at the Eastern Economic Forum in Vladivostok on Tuesday, Putin said Donald Trump's prosecution shows the rottenness of U.S. politics. In Vietnam, dozens of people are feared dead after a massive fire broke out late Tuesday at a 9-story apartment building in the capital, Hanoi. An official death toll has not been released, but local outlets say at least 30 people were killed, including children, as the blaze was extinguished in the early hours of the morning. More than 50 others were severely injured and taken to hospital. Witnesses who live near the apartment building described hearing residents screaming for help as they tried to flee the building, which reportedly only had one exit. The small apartment balconies were also surrounded by iron bars. One witness said a small boy was thrown out from the building as the flames consumed the complex. Several others reportedly jumped out to escape. In the Philippines, Nobel Peace Prize laureate and journalist Maria Ressa and her website Rappler have been acquitted of their final tax evasion charge. They were acquitted of 4 other tax evasion charges in January. Maria Ressa had been systematically persecuted for her work by former President Rodrigo Duterte. Ressa still faces 3 other cases, including a 6-year sentence for cyber libel from 2020, which she is now appealing to the Supreme Court. To see our interviews with Maria Ressa, go to democracynow.org. Here in the U.S., new data shows the poverty rate among children more than doubled last year due to record inflation and the expiration of the child tax credit. The pandemic relief helped decrease child poverty rate to a historic low of 5.2% in 2021. That figure surged over 12% after conservative Democratic Senator Joe Manchin and congressional Republicans opposed an extension of the relief. Manchin was the decisive vote. He falsely claims some low-income parents use the payments to buy drugs when data showed most families use the money to buy food and help with rent. The Debt Collective said on social media, quote, Joe Manchin's legacy includes artificially manufacturing child poverty for no reason other than his callous disregard for human beings, unquote. Overall poverty also increased in 2022 to 12.4%, up from 7.8% in 2021, with more than 37 million U.S. residents living in poverty, the largest single-year jump ever recorded in the U.S. The Center for Reproductive Rights filed lawsuits on behalf of 8 patients and 4 OBGYNs in 3 states, Idaho, Tennessee, and Oklahoma. The plaintiffs argue abortion bans led to doctors refusing to provide the procedure even in emergency situations over fears of prosecution and other penalties. One of the patients, Nicole Blackman, was forced to carry out her pregnancy after doctors in Tennessee refused to provide an abortion even though there was no chance the fetus would survive. She went on to suffer from preeclampsia, which can be fatal, and delivered a stillborn 7 months into the pregnancy. Nancy Northup, head of the Center for Reproductive Rights, said, quote, no one should have to be at death's door to receive essential health care. But that's exactly what happens when doctors are forced to practice medicine under threat of imprisonment. The women standing up today survived, but it's only a matter of time before someone does not, Northup said. In Tennessee, a federal grand jury indicted 5 former Memphis police officers for the beating death of Tyree Nichols in January. In addition to state second-degree murder charges, the officers now also face federal civil rights conspiracy and obstruction charges. Video footage shows the men brutally beating, tasing, and pepper spraying the 29-year-old black father during a traffic stop, which led to his death 3 days later. Tyree Nichols' father, Rodney Wells, spoke Tuesday following the new indictment.
This is a long time coming, and we're so glad that we've reached this point. Now, the next milestone is the actual convictions.
Amen. That's right. Yeah.
Justice for Tyree.
Justice for Tyree.
Justice for Tyree.
Justice for Tyree.
In Ohio, the family of Takia Young is demanding justice weeks after the 21-year-old pregnant mother was shot dead as she was attempting to drive away from a Kroger grocery store parking lot. The police pursued the young black woman after accusing her of shoplifting. Body cam video was released Friday. The family's lawyer, Sean Walton, said, quote, what's clear is that petty theft does not justify murder, and comply or die is not the rule of law in this country. The fact that an unarmed woman was shot unjustifiably, then dragged from her car and handcuffed after being shot should shock the conscience of everyone, he said. Opening arguments took place in a D.C. courtroom Tuesday in the closely watched antitrust case brought by the federal government in 38 states and territories against Google. They accuse Google of illegally protecting its search engine monopoly by paying billions of dollars to Apple and other smartphone companies and web browsers to be their default search engine. It's the largest antitrust lawsuit brought by the U.S. government against a major tech company since the Justice Department sued Microsoft over 20 years ago. U.S. District Judge Amit Mehta is presiding over the case. He could theoretically order the breakup of Google should the company lose, though analysts say it's more likely Google would be forced to change its business practices. A loss for the government could have implications for its ability to regulate tech and other industry monopolies. The trial is expected to last 10 weeks. In a major victory for climate activists, New York University plans to divest from fossil fuels. Student organizers have been pushing for the divestment for nearly 20 years. The Guardian reported the chair of the NYU Board of Trustees announced a decision in an August letter addressed to Sunrise NYU. The group wrote on social media, quote, "This is a huge win for climate justice. Congratulations to every student organizer who made this happen," they said. And in Washington, D.C., at least 34 indigenous activists were arrested as they rallied in front of the White House, calling on President Biden to grant clemency to political prisoner indigenous leader Leonard Peltier.